Hey guys, Stephen Harper here, and in this video we're going to fix the Deutz Fahr combine. Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video we're going to fix the 1600H Deutz Fahr combine. So what went wrong?
Okay, so we're getting ready for harvest. So what happened? Well, unfortunately something catastrophic happened and it broke. So you can see here that there's a big gap underneath it. So there's a bush that fits in there, and that keeps all of this tight. Obviously there should be washers and then a roll pin out here as well, and it pivots here and it goes like this. This action, you can see it's joined here, moves a big table back and forth like this, and this is the shaking effect that sieves out the barley, say like the actual grains of barley, from the straw and the chaff and everything else. So what I think happened is this broke. This floated out this way. There's a bearing in there. It came out of the bearing, which meant the table that it sits on that moves back and forth was no longer actually connected. So because this is not connected, this is actually duplicated on the opposite side of the combine. The opposite side of the combine was now taking the full weight or the full strain of this shaking table. And unfortunately the pin down here, you can see it there, on the opposite side has actually snapped and has fallen down. So we were cutting beans at the time last year. We were, say, probably 3/4 of the way through the field, and unfortunately this happened. It was the very last field, so we got the contractor in to finish off the field, so we didn't actually get to fix it. So because we're cutting beans, beans are quite heavy. They sat on the table, and as I was moving forward, unfortunately this broke, and I didn't know, because it sounded exactly the same without any. The combine was still moving because down here, this piece here moves as well. So the shaking effect was still going through the combine. I drove forward, and unfortunately all the beans were still coming in, and it jammed up all of the inside of the combine. So I'm probably not going to see it in the dark, but way off in there it's all jammed full to the gills, so full to the brim. All in here, up from here, right here to here, is totally full of beans. So we have to empty the beans. The bearing here has popped out on the far side and on this side, so the table's sitting down, so we have to get that up. But first we have to replace the shaft that goes through here.
So as you can see, it's a little bit more apart than it should be.
So what went wrong? Well, obviously you can see that a lot of it has been taken apart. This is the shaft. It should be in there. Let's go around to the other side to see what the problem was. Okay, so I have one new bearing in, but the shaft would have come out here and attached to this piece here that goes around, and that does the shake that drives the combine, you know, to shake it forwards and backwards, and that shakes the barley out of the straw. So the problem here is the shaft here snapped, unfortunately. Don't know why it snapped directly, but my prediction of why it snapped is this is a little shaft here. It's a cone shaft, so it is actually tapered. You see, one end is thick and one end is quite narrow, and it goes into the bearing. So this is a brand new bearing as well. So obviously it only goes in one way, and when the shaft snapped and when I took it out of here, I had both ends, but this was missing. So I think what happened was, just over time, the stresses that the shaft is under, it probably just broke this piece up. When this broke up, it was sitting in there, so it goes in from the far side like that. So when that broke up and fell out of it, the shaft now was going to wiggle around like that on inside it, and eventually it wouldn't be going around perfectly in time. It snapped away from this here, and when that snapped away from this, the end broke loose. So obviously I've gotten this one remade, and you can see that's the full length of it. So there's a kiwi at the bottom, kiwi at the top. Kiwis have to be in line, but it snapped just here or somewhere along here. I'll put in a picture of what it looked like now. So that's what it looks like. So that's where it broke, and this is now been fixed. So we're going to put the new shaft in. I'm going to put that end in first and put this end in here because it's probably the stronger end now that it's been welded. And all this gear has to come off first for this to go in, and then it all has to go back on again. So let's get to it. Okay. the other side. There's the shaft. Oh. Okay. Go on. There we are. Okay, let's get the collar back onto it and see if we can tighten it up. So this, I don't know what it's called, a washer I suppose with little teeth on it. It's keyed, so you can see the end of the key is just underneath there, or there maybe. So that's locked, so it can't move. Then you put the collar on, and when the collar is nice and tight, you bend one of these teeth, so they're all kind of like a little bit out of phase. So you find like the tooth that's probably the most right, which will be this one here, and just bend that tooth back into this groove. And that'll lock this on so it can't move. I think that's the problem with the last one, that this one wasn't locked, and I think the shaft was just moving slightly and then it just broke up. Right, let's do the other side. Okay, so I put the locking collar on. It's 180 degrees out of phase, so there's the gap in that. And on the opposite side is the split pin, so it's just there. So yeah, it's on the opposite side anyway. So now to get the bearing on, the collar has to go on first, then the bearing I can't put on the other way around. So I think the best thing is just line it up. We put a bolt in each one of these and then give it a tap and just send it home. So you can see it's stepped, so it's going to be very tight. And when I have the collar on this, so I obviously have to tap this all the way. Once this goes all the way in, these threads will be more exposed. And when I put the collar on, it'll make this very rigid and there'll be absolutely no play in it. So yeah, let's do that. Okay, after tightening up all of these now, so now the next thing is to get this collar on. The washer, whatever it's going to be called. The lock, I suppose. And on this, it's tapered on one side. And that taper matches in against these. So spin it in and we'll tighten it up. Okay, that's now keyway hit in, the nut here nice and tight, and the shaft, there's no movement in it. So now to rebuild the rest of it. What is the rest of it? Well, I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I think it's actually this piece here. So this has to go onto this and it fits over the keyway. So we're going to install this next. Okay, next the pulley goes on. So the pulley's now on the shaft. Now the cog. You can see it's starting to line up. There's the keyway off in there. So we're going to get that out. Just gentle tap. Okay. Well, if it wasn't one side on top of the other, now it should go in. Now, perfect. Okay, so now I have all of this now finished, so it's all rebuilt. I have the chain back on, sprocket on, pulleys on, belt on, all tensioned up. All seems to be perfect. This here is we call the seesaw, so it's a rocker, so it pivots here and does this. This is what gives that combine, that shaking effect, and that separates out the barley, say from the awns or from the jaff. So this is the returns. So it takes the oxygen in here, you can see from the vent, and just blows it in, along with any returns to be rescreened. And let's have a look in here. Okay, now that we have all of this rebuilt, let's go around the back and start emptying out the beans. The space is so tight in here, I think the easiest thing to do is actually hoover it out. We tried using a poker or a rake, but that wasn't very successful, so we ended up renting this industrial hoover. And then we climbed actually inside of the combine. We take turns climbing in and out. As one person would get tired, the other person would be replaced. We had to hoover all the beans out. So you can see my dad is currently in there. This was the least fun job, so he did it the least amount of time and I was shoved in most of the time. And we had to shove the top of the hoover in about 1 meter or 3 feet. This is totally blocked up, so it's a mixture of poking it with the hoover and sucking the beans out with the hoover. But we got it there eventually. Okay, so next we have, hey cat, what are you doing there? Well, the cat is on this side. We have all this emptied, and now it's all this side here now to empty next. Hey, puss puss. Okay, now that we have nearly all the beans out, we're going to use a crowbar either side and try to lift the table. Okay, so we got it back. So after a lot of work, we were able to lift this. You can see some damage marks there, and there's the witness mark from when this shaft popped out and slammed up against this. So what we had to do was lift it up and pull it back at the same time, and then line up everything so the big pin would slide into this. Not as easy as you think it might be, because there's very little room, there's no play in it. So we had to line up everything and then hit it with a sledgehammer here and try to force it all back in. And from the inside we have to tap it back out as well. And then on the far side we do the same thing and get everything to line up. So on the far side, this pin here, we had to take off the bearing. So you can see one nut there. The second one is hidden up here and the third one is hidden off down there. So it's not the easiest thing to remove. So we had to take everything off, take the bearing out, and the shaft had come out of the bearing, but had actually made it like had mushroomed itself. So we had to take a die grinder and clean it off to make it nice and circular again, so the bearing would slide in and out on it. Otherwise, the other alternative we had to do was on the far side, obviously, to remove all of this, remove it down there. This was already removed. Remove it up here, try and slide it all out, and then try and fix it. So I figured out the best way to do it was just get die grinder and then clean it out. So once we had it, would slide in and out the bearing, reassemble the bearing. Now the bearing is not easy to get back in. So it's the bearing and there's two half cups, and they kind of sandwich in between the bearing, and then you have to get these bolts in. The only way to get those bolts in is come around to the back of the combine, climb all the way in there. You can see there's 3 there and there's 2 there, so the third one still has to go in, but I lost the nut. It's somewhere inside it to come out, but that's to be fixed afterwards. So yeah, not the easiest thing to do. I had to climb all the way in there, so there's spikes in everything, get the impact gun, hold it here on these nuts and bolts, and my dad was on the outside and he'd line them up and we'd whiz them in. So we got them in. An absolute awful job. I'm nearly pretty sure that this thing here went in first and they just built the combine around it, because that's how difficult it is to get in and out. Okay, so here we are on the far side. You can see there's a bakelite bearing. We had to pull all of this assembly out far enough to get this shaft to meet in front of the bearing, and obviously put it back in. You can see it's an absolute pain in the job, pain in the arse to do, because there's the auger or paddle auger that brings it all the way up to the very top into the tank, and so nothing is quite accessible. It's designed to be the most arsehole way of designing everything. So yeah, all of this had to come out to get this one bearing back in, which is absolutely a pain in the arse to do, but yeah, we managed to do it. Released all the pressure here, had a big chisel in here and drove all of this out this way enough, just barely to get that bearing in. But yeah, all back together again. This here is the shaft that snapped, so it just snapped there, and all of this was hanging down. There's all the witness marks from where I was whacking off the side, because it was still bouncing around, but like it wasn't working. So yeah, thankfully we have it all back together again. Okay, now that the combine's all back together again, let's go up and give it a start. It's alive! Okay, you can see the machine working, so you can see this is the seesaw. You can see it moving forward and backwards. The drive is coming in here, come over here, it's just rotating this, moving all of this assembly. See these two here are moving, and the bed here is going back here, and it's moving forward and backwards. These are doing other things on the far side as well, so sometimes the drive is switching from side to side, but you get the general idea. Let's have a look in the back. So you can see that everything is moving at the moment. These are shaking forward and backwards, and these are doing the opposite of the shake, forward and backwards. This side here again, this is a piece of broke, so you can see that's going round and around, so when it broke off, it'll bang bang bang.
So guys, that's my quick walk around and testing of the combine. We've fixed it all and it's ready to go again. So stay tuned and hopefully it's ready to cut this year's harvest. So guys, thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment and subscribe. Give me that thumbs up. Subscribe over there. And if you like the video and you want to support me, you can do so at give me a super thanks. You can see the button down there below. Give me a super thanks and you can give a donation of €2 or €4, whatever you want to. That'd be absolutely awesome. So yeah, stay tuned and hopefully we are going to cut this year's harvest.